Welcome to Linux for Everyone for the first time. What's really interesting about this is there is a bit of a tradition where I ask a guest who's on here for the first time what their Linux origin story is.
Okay.
And normally that's just kind of a precursor to what we're going to talk about, but this is kind of like your entire story right now. So, and that's why I wanted to get on here and talk to you about it. Tell us who you are and what you do, both professionally and for fun.
Okay. Well, my name's Edward Crisler. I'm the North American PR representative and gaming evangelist for Sapphire Technology. Though in this particular case, I'm on here as Ed the Gamer. I've been a computer gamer for almost 48 years now. It's been 48 years. I've worked professionally in the industry for over 30. I've been everything from a small repair technician to a networking specialist. I've done programming. I ran my own shop. I did a radio show as a professional reviewer for almost 20 years. And then I got hired by Sapphire. And at Sapphire, I do a little bit of everything. So it's been a crazy ride. It's been a fun ride. I get to live my dream. I love computers. I love PC gaming.
What you've been into PC gaming since you were what, in your teens?
14.
Like 14? Okay.
Yeah, there weren't PCs back then.
I was going to say,
my first PC gaming was on a mainframe system called Plato.
A mainframe system?
Yeah. If you look up Plato, everybody talks about this. They say the basis of the internet. Plato was really the basis of the internet. It was out of the University of Illinois, and it had terminals in like 30 locations at the time I was using it. All over the country, in South Africa, in England, it had all these terminals connected in. And we were gaming together, talking to gamer, learning how to program.
What were you playing?
The first game I ever played, I remember this, the first game I ever played was a game called Bugs and Drugs. And
Never heard of it.
Bugs and Drugs was it wasn't ever a commercial game.
Oh, okay.
It was developed by a medical department at Harvard. And I think it was Harvard. I could be wrong on that. And the idea behind it was to help, using D&D as a way to do it, help patients understand drug interactions with various viruses and bacteria.
Wow.
So the drugs were your weapons.
Interesting application.
It was fun. It was just fun.
That's really cool. What year was that? You don't have to say.
1977.
77. Okay, because my first brush with PC gaming was 1984.
Oh man, you're a youngster.
Oh, I'm a youngster. Young at heart anyway. But yeah, it was playing I found a 5 1/4 floppy, actually a bunch of drawers of 5 1/4 floppies in my stepdad's garage. He was a computer tech. And it was a bunch of shareware games, like with silly names like, Doug or
Doug was awesome, man.
Pac-Man or like just, fake names for the real thing. I think they were clones at the time. They weren't the actual licensed games, but they were clones.
Doug was a clone of Dig Dug.
Doug was Dig Dug. Yeah. And so, I've absolutely fell in love after that, and I've kind of been into gaming ever since. So, wow, what an interesting origin story for you. I just wanted to ask you kind of what your day-to-day looks like with Sapphire and your PR job.
Well, my day-to-day is actually pretty calm.
Yeah.
PR is not as intense as it used to be a few years ago because there's not new product launches just constantly rolling off.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time in community building, in Reddit and Discord, going through the few forums I still use. Most people don't use forums anymore. Talking to people with emails. I help with our customer service.
Oh,
so
okay.
if somebody has a tech issue, I try to help resolve it if I can. Or sometimes even our tech support team will contact me and say, hey, can you help with this? We haven't seen this error before. Because I have a broader selection of gaming to be able to test for errors and be able to find errors. So it's a lot of community work. And then the other cool aspect of it is obviously when I get to travel, when I get to go to like QuakeCon or I go to LAN War, which we just did LAN War in January. And those events are a blast because I don't like trade shows. Most PR reps live and die in trade shows. I hate trade shows.
But they're exhausting. I know they were exhausting for me, and I know they're exhausting for you.
It's not the exhausting part. I can do that stuff all day long. It's that, so we went and we did C&E, Canadian National Exhibition. And they were estimating on one Saturday, 20,000 people walked past our booth. Of 20,000 people, we had maybe 20 that stopped and engaged. Because when you go to a big trade show like that, most of the people there aren't your target audience. But when I go to a LAN party, when I go to LAN War, or I go to QuakeCon, that's 100% my people.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are people that we talk the same language, we love the same things, and that to me is so much of a better experience. And we've been able to translate that into good things at Sapphire. For example, you got to go back, I want to say it's the 480. Nobody in AMD had done a proper small form factor ITX card yet. It hadn't been done. We did. We were the first ones to do it.
I remember.
That came from a LAN party called LAN OC. And I had gone to the LAN party and talked to them, and I hadn't been introduced really to small form factor yet at that point. I just built big computers. It didn't dawn on me. And these guys built a ton of small form factor stuff. And I'm like, this is amazing. We need to do this more. And so I went, yelled and screamed, and we ended up producing a card to do it. So we have taken a lot of feedback we get from the community that I can get from shows and we can get through social media. We apply it. Now, we don't always get to use it, but we always look at it. We always explore it.
Do you remember what that card was?
Well, it's like I said, I think it was a 480.
It was just a mini ITX 480, right?
It was just a little mini ITX 480. It was black and silver.
So this was about the time that
two slot and about half a length.
So this was maybe about the time that the NVIDIA 750 Ti was out, or was that roughly the same time, right?
I've been doing this long enough that all gets lost. The timing gets lost.
Yeah. I mean, I remember one of the highlights when I was working at Forbes before I got into Linux, and I was just doing GPU reviews and PC gaming stuff on the Windows side, obviously. Right. Was building mini ITX systems, benchmarking them, and talking about them. That was so much fun. You're still DIYing your computers, I would assume.
Well, I still build my own computers.
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about RGB anymore. I'm not worried about there's a screen on an AIO. I don't even use AIOs anymore. I'm not worried about those things. I want my computer to be quiet and out of the way. It should, like your operating system, disappear. Yes. You should be focused on what you're doing with the computer, not the computer.
I had this tagline for a while on Linux for Everyone, and it was use Linux and make your PC personal again. Yeah. Because that's what PC stands for. Believe it or not, personal computer. And it used to be, by the way, on Microsoft Windows until probably Windows 10, it was my computer, not this PC. My computer.
Well, you know, it's funny. We're seeing history repeat itself. Up until Windows 98, it was a great operating system. But then Windows ME, they tried to throw everything in the kitchen sink into that operating system. They wanted to become more than an OS. They wanted to become a platform. The enthusiasts all said, no, we don't want this. It wasn't you couldn't use ME, okay? People like to joke about that. You could use ME fine. ME worked, but it was bloated and it was overdone. Enthusiasts moved to Windows 2000.
Yes.
Which was based off the server platform from Windows NT.
Because it was boring and it was stable and it worked.
Microsoft realized the mistake they had made, and when they made Windows XP, it was based on the Windows 2000 kernel. They took a step backwards. They went to Windows 2000, and then we had Windows 2000, basically, like you said, until Windows 10. We kept that clean, simple system, but it gradually bloated again. This is where I think Microsoft's making its mistake. I get packaging stuff together, okay? That's the thing I've learned about Linux. Everybody talks about distros. There's a lot of confusion in distros, okay? Most Linux distros function exactly the same. It's what's packaged with them. It's how they're packaged. that makes them different. Bazzite isn't all that different from a standard Fedora KDE packaging. It's just, it's got a few extra things they added out of the gate to make the gaming experience easier without you having to go find it.
Yeah, and to make it less prone to user-created problems.
That's what an operating system should be. And the funny thing is, Microsoft could actually fix this tomorrow because they already have the right solution. Windows LTSC.
Yes.
Or IoT.
Mm-hmm.
Both of these are nothing but the operating system. Everything else is gone. Okay, if I want OneDrive, let me add OneDrive. If I don't want OneDrive, let me take it out. But if I want AI, let me use AI. Otherwise, take it out. Give me the options and the choice.
But see, okay, so we talked about that on the first episode of Games for Everyone last month. We're like, what would a Windows, like a gaming specific version of Windows look like? And it was basically what you just said, like strip out all of that stuff. Just make it a Windows 2000 experience, right? But just with modern drivers. Just update it to that. But
I don't even think you need to talk about being gaming specific. Forget the gaming specific for a minute. An OS should be agnostic. Okay, what's packaged with the OS is where it points to. The OS itself should be completely without regard for the usage. It's general computer control, and that's it. You shouldn't look at your OS. You should look at the app you're using. That should be what's important, and that's where Microsoft's they've lost their way.
It's like you said. Like it was gradually becoming a platform and not an OS. And it is a platform now for subscription deliveries. And that's where they're making their money. You know, their gaming revenue is 1% less than Windows itself. And cloud is a huge, huge piece of the pie, right? So of course they want to just sell services. Well, they're not going to make that, stripped down Windows 2000 style version of Windows 11.
I don't know that they won't. There are people in Microsoft that I've talked to that would like to. They would really like to move back to that type of an approach. Let's actually make an OS.
But do the shareholders
want apps you can add to it?
Like you said, though, they already have that solution, but I don't think it's ever going to cross over from enterprise to consumer.
There is so much misunderstanding in the industry about the consumer base. They think all gamers have to have RGB. And yet every poll I've ever seen, most gamers don't like RGB. It's not just RGB. It's all these little screens for monitoring data. You've got to know what your temperatures are on your GPU. Why? Why do you need to know that?
Well, reviewers might need to know that, but
reviewers
that's really
need to know that during the review.
Right.
They don't need to know
care
that
aside
daily.
from that.
If you built your system right, the temperatures are going to be doing what they should do. If they get too high, you're going to notice performance issues, and then you're going to go back and check.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm playing a game, I'm focused on the gameplay. I'm not spending time looking at my screen going, what's my GPU temperature right now? I'm not going to panic about, oh my God, it's 2C higher than it was an hour ago.
I've always wondered how many people who use like a Steam Deck, for example, how many people turn that performance overlay on beyond just the FPS in the top left corner. 2% of people
I don't think most even watch the FPS.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Is it smooth? Is it stable? Those are the only things that matter.
Not to talk about your competitors, but Tom Peterson as an individual is brilliant. I've always respected his work.
He's a good guy.
Tom Peterson, for anyone who doesn't know, used to work at NVIDIA. Very esteemed engineer, created G-Sync. It is pretty much the reason we have things like variable refresh rate, things like that. He works at Intel now, and he's been really talking up the fact that FPS is not a metric we should be using to measure game performance anymore. It should be like latency and micro stutter and, and smoothness. And
this is because we've gotten to the point now. My wife said it best. We've become a caveman culture. Big number, good. That's the approach.
But that's so true, right? 4.6 gigahertz is better than 4.5 gigahertz. You got to have 16 gigs of RAM instead of 8 gigs. Yeah.
We don't talk about nuance. We don't talk about the way things work and why something is the way you want it to be. For the majority of gamers, for example, anything past about 120 frames per second, it's next to impossible for you to notice it in gameplay. Yet we constantly are telling people, you need to get 165 hertz monitors. And then they believe that they need to run 165 frames per second to use the monitor. No, that's the peak. You're going to run lower than that in most cases. And it also depends on the game. In Civilization, do you really think you can tell the difference between 75 frames per second and 120? I saw this chart this morning, in fact, that was looking at video cards, and it was comparing best to worst. And you look at the chart, the worst has an average frame rate of 160. Who cares about the best? Why were you paying extra for the extra?
Then it just comes down to like cost and availability beyond that, right?
It does. But you see, we've even got this problem in Linux right now. The amazing thing to me about Linux gaming is not the performance numbers. It's the fact I can't tell the difference. I can game in Windows, I can game in Linux. They both do exactly the same thing just fine. Considering that Linux is having to do that with an overlay,
or with
that's incredible.
With the performance overhead of Proton is not negligible, right? I think it's anywhere from 5 to 20% depending on the game.
If you want to compare Windows and Linux, you need to focus on workflow. You need to focus on how you use the operating system aspects, not the performance number. The performance numbers are pretty much irrelevant now.
I did a video recently evaluating a mini PC. So I think it's an 890M in that one. Radeon 890M. Pretty good integrated GPU. And by the way, finally, I was on the hunt for so long when I was at Forbes, like, okay, does this APU give us 1080p 30 at least? 1080p 30, like that's the dream. 1080p with an iGPU, right? We're finally there. So I benchmarked 6 games across Windows 11 and Bazite. But the benchmark results were so similar, but the visually, it was worlds apart, right? So I just did split screen, and over here, Bazite typically got about the same FPS or maybe 1 or 2 FPS better, right? Negligible. It's a W, but negligible. Windows got higher 1% lows than Bazite did by about 5 to 15% in every game. But Bazite looked like worlds apart, right? There was no micro stutter. It was nice and smooth. The frame pacing was more consistent.
That's back to the gameplay experience.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that matters at the end of the day is the gameplay experience.
Yeah.
I don't care how fast my game runs if it's smooth and it looks good. And it's stable. That's the other thing. It's got to be stable.
As someone who is responsible for selling Radeon graphics cards,
yes.
do you ever get caught up in that FPS war? Because that's what all the marketing has always been about, right?
Well,
now it's more about like, well, we have better frame gen or we have better upscaling.
I have always tried to distance myself from the FPS war. When you compare, we use the 9070 as an example. The slowest 9070 on the market versus the fastest 9070 on the market, the performance difference is a delta of about 3%, if it's that. Okay? What's more important, how well is the card made? How good is the cooling? Is it quiet?
Absolutely.
What's the support like? These are factors that are way more important now, because when you start looking at performance class, you're going to find that even across competition, the performance classes are pretty much in the same ballpark. So you got to look at the quality of the product you're getting. That's a more important purchasing decision.
People who are buying GPUs are not on the same upgrade cycle as phones. Like they don't want to buy a new GPU every couple years.
Well,
they want it for the life of their computer, probably.
I actually had this discussion on Discord with somebody the other day. They were talking about this guy was looking to make a computer purchase. He was buying a used computer. And the used computer he was buying was one of those that had no upgrade path. It was done. It was where it was going to be. That was it. Yeah. He's trying to tell him, oh, it's a terrible purchase. It's a terrible purchase. I said, you don't understand. Most gamers, we make this mistake. Most gamers are not tech enthusiasts. They don't care. They want to play their games. That's all they want to do. Why do you think consoles sell so well? Most gamers, when they buy a PC, will ride that horse till it's dead. And then they'll just buy a new one. They don't upgrade. The GPU cycle has hit the same point. You don't look at upgrading. If you've got a 7900 XT, you're probably not going to buy a 9070. And it's not that the 9070 doesn't give you benefits by buying it. It's not worth the cost to you to make the move. Even if you've got a 6900, there's a good chance you're not looking to do that upgrade. You're usually skipping 1 or 2 generations when you make the upgrade.
Yeah.
And that's a significant number, but we don't look at that number. We look at the simple, bigger, better number. Most users don't even understand how benchmarking works. Benchmarking is a clinical clean room of a PC and a snapshot of time.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's not a gaming experience. It's not actual usage. It's potential performance.
It's marketing data in my eyes.
It is.
That's
At
all
the
it
end of the
is
day, it's
marketing data. Yeah.
I would prefer.
And I know, man, when I was at AMD, we were like cherry picking, like that game has 3% versus 5% performance advantage. Let's promote that one instead of this one.
This is why I said I try to stay away from the benchmark traps. I want you to have an amazing gaming experience. If my advice helps you have an amazing gaming experience, then you're going to buy a Sapphire product. And it's not going to be the one-time purchase because at that moment my numbers were better. It's going to be a lifelong commitment as a partner with us because you know I'm trying to look out for what's best for you.
Yeah.
And that's my approach to how you deal with this.
And honestly, when I was in the game, when I was in the review game, I genuinely thought that Sapphire was the best around in terms of the overall package, right? The build quality, the support,
really believe we are.
The community, because I always looked at like how are they engaging with the community and things like that, and they're always just consistently good cards. What prompted you after all of this time, and especially given your professional background? What prompted you to switch to Linux? Was it like a single thing that triggered you, or was it kind of a slow burn?
A little bit of a slow burn. Wendell from Level 1 Tech had talked to me a few times about doing this.
Oh, okay.
And his advice has been amazing when I started this.
It normally is.
Yeah, that guy.
Guy's brilliant.
I'm usually considered pretty smart when it comes to computers, and I feel like a moron when I talk to Wendell.
If I'm not mistaken, he was responsible for getting a certain, I think it was the Zen 2 chipset, up and running on Linux before AMD did.
Oh, I could imagine he's done that more than once.
Yeah.
The guy is incredible. Hi, Wendell. I love you, brother. And he's a great guy. That's the other thing I love. He's a genuinely nice guy. So anyway, Wendell kind of got me started down the road. I was experimenting at first. I was just dipping my toes in the water a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Were you kind of like just distro hopping and checking out?
Well, I was, but I was running it on a test bench, and I'd go play with it for an hour or two a day, and then I'd go back to my Windows PC and do whatever.
Okay.
Until one day I got hit with the dreaded Windows has overwritten my driver bug. The first time this happened, I was like, okay, it happens. It's okay. Then, after I took all the steps to stop Windows from downloading driver updates, it did it again.
Jesus.
And
people say you have to tweak Linux to get it working.
And people are telling me, well, that doesn't happen. Yes, it does. Okay. You can't tell me I don't know how to configure a computer. All right?
Yeah. Like I've literally been doing it since Windows was a thing.
I've been doing it before personal computers existed. So, and I run a very clean system. I don't run a lot of background apps. I'm not always out of date on my drivers for my video card because this is what I do, and I've got to be able to test.
Yeah.
So it was just really frustrating. Then I got hit with, it was one of the update bugs. I can't remember what the update bug was that it did. Oh, HDR. And I said, enough. Okay, let me go over and play with Linux seriously. Let me get serious now. So I spent about 3 or 4 months still doing with the test bench, but I was spending a lot more time with it. And I explored a couple of different distros. I looked at CachyOS. I looked at Bazite. I looked at Maduro. Am I saying that right?
Manjaro. Yeah.
Also, what's the one? Is that the one Golden Egg does? GE.
Oh, Glorious Egg Roll.
Glorious Egg Roll.
Glorious Egg Roll.
Right
He does Nobara.
Okay, so I
It's
looked
a
at it
Fedora-based gaming distribution. Yeah.
In
Nobara.
the end, I settled on Bazite because I like the immutable design. I like the fact
Same.
I don't want to tweak it. I want to use it. So I settled on Bazite. I ran it for 3 months, dual booting between it and Windows. I do my work in Windows, but I game in Bazite.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time in Bazite. And then January 1st, I made the move. I said, forget it. I pulled my Windows drive out of my PC.
Oh.
And I've been running nothing but Bazite, with the exception of a couple of work machines that I have to for things I do, but nothing but Bazite ever since. I had to find ways to make certain things work, but it wasn't nearly as hard as people believe it is.
Were there any myths about Linux or any horror stories that you heard that just ended up not being true? And
well, the first myth about Linux is you have to understand the command line,
which is ridiculous.
I haven't touched the command line.
Well, how do you update?
In Bazite, there's a system update button.
Yep.
You tell the system update. Yeah, it goes.
I guess
to
it
command
technically
line
uses command line, but
I don't use command line.
All you have to do is click yes and reboot or quit.
And then tell to reboot or quit, and you're done. Yeah. It has been a very pleasurable experience.
Nice.
Now, there are some things I don't like.
Okay.
Because like I said, Linux has made me change how I look at an OS.
Yeah.
So now I'm more focused on the applications. There are just some Windows applications that are much more polished.
Which ones do you rely on?
Well, the one that bugs me the most, as silly as it sounds, is weather.
Weather.
I love the Windows MSN weather app. I thought that it gave me the information I wanted. It was easy to find. I use Outlook a lot for my personal emails and stuff. But what I found is I can go into my browser. What is it? PWA is what it's called when it does this. So what you do is you go into a browser and you can tell it to save a site as an app.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I've done that for my 2 Outlook and my Gmail account. Now, that's a little more complicated than just opening Outlook on the desktop and having all 3 accounts in it.
Sure. But it's a solution.
You know what? It still works. It still does what I want it to do.
Yeah.
I have to use Microsoft Office, but I use that through the web apps, and they work well. And OnlyOffice actually is a solid alternative. The thing I did learn is if you're going to build a Linux system, the key is keep it simple, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to get rid of RGB because everybody's, use OpenRGB. It only works half the time, and then it may not work completely. I've got that problem. I can change the color of my motherboard's RGB, but I can't change the brightness. I can't turn on special effects. Forget it. It's easier just to get rid of the RGB, which I did. It's also the same with peripherals. I've got a Insta360 2C for my camera, which is working just fine. But here comes the but.
Okay.
I don't have fine control. I don't have the ability to really control the zoom well. I can't change if I want 4K or 1080p. I can't use the buttons to move the camera up and down a little bit.
Right.
I can't use any of that. And then I've got I'm using a Rode pod mic USB, which is a great mic. But what you're hearing is just default. I can't go in and change the feature set because that's all based on a Windows driver. Those are the things I miss.
And that's fair. I mean, there are apps on Linux designed for Logitech cameras, but I haven't seen one personally. If anybody knows one that's designed for the Insta360 series,
I've been looking. I've been asking around. Now, the really sad part to me was I reached out to Insta. I reached out to Rode. And I said, hey, is there a chance you guys are working on a Linux? Because I'd be happy to help you test it. Cool. And the response was, no, not at this time are we considering working on Linux software. And that is sadly a lot of the industry.
It is.
Right now.
It is. But I feel like that's going to change. I feel like that's going to change, and Valve is going to be the primary driver for that.
I think people are giving too
know?
much credit to Valve. Valve deserves all the credit for Proton. Okay, absolutely. Proton is amazing, and it is what allows Linux gaming to be what it is.
Mhm.
I've played with SteamOS. It's a console that wants to be a PC. And by the way, Valve admits that. They're not worried so much about the desktop experience. They want that big screen experience. The Steambox is supposed to be the introduction to pull console gamers into PC world. A lot of PC gamers don't understand this, okay? It's designed to function like a console, but with a PC library. So think about that. You've got a library that's 100 times the size. You've got the ability to mod the games. The game prices are lower, and you don't have a subscription fee. This is a huge driving point.
I thought that Steam Deck was going to be everything that you just mentioned, but not really. Like, people will dock it, but no one uses it really. No one. I mean, a very small percentage of Steam Deck owners actually use it as their desktop PC.
Again, it's SteamOS. It's a lousy desktop.
No.
It is. It's a lousy desktop.
Ed,
you compare that.
It's just a customized Arch.
Well,
I mean, it's
sorta
KDE.
They really went out of their way to package it with a very specific focus.
Yeah.
When I compare it to Bazite or Kashi at a desktop level, it's not even close. Okay.
I do prefer Bazite. I'm with you there.
It's just not even close. But it was never meant to be that. It's meant to be a console-esque approach to the PC gaming solutions. It does that really well, just incredibly well. But it helps because it took care of a very specific problem in the Linux community, which was gaming.
Yeah.
Now, the rest of it, the community's got to fix. And the community is great and terrible, like every community is, all at the same time. I've had people in the community that want to reach out, that want to help me, because I'm still a Linux noob. They want to reach out and help me, and I love them for it. They're great people. They're very patient. They're very helpful. And then you've got the complete other side. Well, if you're not learning command line, you really shouldn't even be bothering with Linux. Shut up, you gatekeepers. Go away.
You know, me and this community, like, we just try not to acknowledge that they exist. Because there's no room for gatekeeping.
And they're vocal.
And they're the reason that I think a lot of people have been scared away from trying Linux, is because they perpetuate those myths that were only true like in the early 2000s and the 90s with Linux. You know,
Linux has
they act like it hasn't changed, and it's evolved more than Windows has,
especially over the last 2 or 3 years.
Oh yeah,
the change over the last 2 or 3 years is crazy.
Yeah, it's been wild. It's been wild.
I get the question asked all the time: is Linux better or is Windows better? That's the wrong question.
Yeah, is it right? It's not a personal. It needs to be a personal question,
which fits your needs
exactly.
And Linux is not. It's not that Linux is better. It's that Linux is now, for the first time in a long time, completely viable for almost every user.
Yeah,
and that's something that it's never had before.
Because honestly, most users are doing almost everything in a browser aside from gaming. Really. You know, so who are the holdouts? The holdouts are probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like the holdouts are probably people who are locked into the Adobe Creative Suite or who are developing Windows software.
Well, those are the
right. I mean,
those are the big holdouts, but the everyday holdout, Windows for me, is like your grandpa's old pair of tennis shoes. They've got holes in them. They're ratty. They smell bad, but they're comfortable, and he's used to them.
Comfortable and familiar.
And that's the big thing that made it difficult for me to move from Windows. Windows is that old pair of tennis shoes. I've been around with Windows since before it started. I was there at the beginning. I've watched the messes. I've written guides for Windows. I've done all of this. And when Windows reaches a point that someone like me is looking at it going, oh, hell no, this is one step too far, Microsoft needs to step back. Because up until this last year, I've been championing most people staying with Windows. Now, I'm not telling you need to switch. I tried to switch my wife to Linux. She only has one application that is an issue for her, and that is Quicken. But Quicken has a web browser solution that does work in Linux.
There you go.
So I told her you just need to convert over to the web browser and you'll be done.
Full functionality in the web app?
Yeah, full functionality for what she does.
Because I've heard this before too. I've heard like basically tax software, like tax software is a reason, but everything's web based.
Tax software is all web based. I got a friend that does tax software. So her problem was, one, she likes it not being on the web.
Oh,
with the banking, which I get.
Yeah, well, totally fair.
And two, she doesn't suffer the issues I've seen with Windows. And the third one, and probably for her, the most important is that Outlook app. She uses that constantly. She uses it for scheduling. She uses it for email. She is constantly looking in Outlook and doing something with it. I'm talking not the professional, by the way. I'm talking the one built into Windows. This is something she uses all the time. And to her, the pain of the conversion isn't worth anything she sees as a gain. Now, she's used Linux. I've set her down in front of Linux and had her use it. She just, and it wasn't hard. She just doesn't see it being worth the time and effort of the conversion. So I tried it with my oldest son, who's a hardcore PC gamer. He gave me exactly the same answer. He said, look, everything you're telling me about this is right. It's great. This is awesome. And if I'm building a new PC, maybe I'm going to go this way. But he said, right now, everything just works in Windows. Why would I mess with that? That's the real killer right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that's mostly true, but man, the driver, like the graphics driver situation on Windows is an abomination lately.
I agree.
And so I'm surprised that someone who is a gamer, that's not making them pull their hair out, you know?
It depends on the games you play.
That's true. Yeah.
All of it at the end of the day comes down to the games you play. If you're a Windows user that wants to switch to Linux, but all you play is Fortnite and other, you're stuck. You're going to stay in Windows. It's not that Windows is the operating system you want. It's the only one that does what you want it to do.
That's right. I feel like a lot of people are just grudgingly using Windows now, not enjoying it, but grudgingly. Like,
I really think that that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
I want the community to slow down because you hear about like, oh man, look at the millions of people that have downloaded Linux.
Oh,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, Zorin
all these
hypes that up a lot.
People looking at Linux is fantastic. In 3 months, how many of them are still using it?
We can't track that.
That's the number. Yeah. That's the number that's important.
Yeah, and this is what I tell people all the time, which some of my audience might not appreciate, but it's the way that I think you need to approach it. Don't just nuke Windows right away. Don't nuke it. Use them both. Get used to it. Acclimate yourself. Don't just make the leap, because I feel like you're asking for headaches if you do that.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to disagree with you partially.
Okay. Because you did that, right? You used it. So you used them side by side both. Okay.
If you have certain usages that it might be difficult to transition, then yes, using a dual boot makes sense, because you need time to figure out how to use the stuff that you're not sure you can get to work right.
That's fair.
And by the way, there's very little you can't get to work right.
Yeah.
If, however, you're just a gamer, you don't do esports games, you like adventure games, you like solo play, simple co-op games. And by the way, there are great shooters that work in this. I play Helldivers 2. I play Space Marines 2. Arc Raiders works in it. Okay, so you've got a lot of good options. If you're a regular user or a gamer that doesn't play esports, do not dual boot. And the reason I say that is we're back to that old comfortable shoe. Okay, so if you buy grandpa a new pair of shoes, if you don't throw away those old shoes, he's never going to wear the new shoes.
This shoe analogy is working for you. It really is
Because,
working
well,
for
think
you.
about it. Every time you put on
Yeah.
a new pair of shoes, what happens? Your foot hasn't
It's
conformed yet. It's a little uncomfortable. It's a little
might get
tight.
some blisters. Yeah.
Grandpa's old enough. He doesn't want to mess with this anymore. He's just going to go back to the old shoes. It's the same thing with this. You're going to jump into Linux, and you're going to have something hit you in the face that's like, well, damn, that didn't work. And then you're going to go seek help. And this is the one area that I wish the Linux community was better. So if I go to seek help on a problem, the first 10 people
where do you let me ask, where do you go? Or
I go a lot to Reddit. I also am on Discord servers for a couple of different distros.
Like Universal Blues?
Universal Blue, Pop OS, Mint, Fedora. You ask the first 10 people, and you know what you get for an answer? 10 different distros.
Absolutely. And they don't ask you about your own
they just
preferences,
say,
right?
Use this distro, it's better.
Yeah,
so,
it's just because they're just recommending what they use.
Now you go to the second 10 people. The second 10 people will give you 10 different command line solutions that you need to copy and paste to put in to be able to make work.
Okay, to be fair, I believe they're giving you those solutions because they are mostly universal.
I believe they are too.
Across your environment or your distro.
Those don't work. What do those 10 people do? 10 different distros again. Now you got 20 different distros and you still don't have an answer to your problem. And this is the way the average Windows user moving to Linux feels in a nutshell when they have a problem. The solution is try a different distro. I made a joke once. You ask 10 Linux users what the best distro is, you'll get 13 answers. It's and at the end of the day, it's irrelevant. We had this discussion on the Bazai Discord. Somebody was talking about Aurora. I don't know if you know what Aurora is.
I vaguely.
So
no.
Aurora is part of Universal Blue. It's part of Universal Blue, but it's just a desktop OS. It's not focused. And I asked, what's the difference between Aurora and Bazai? Well, once you install Steam, not enough to care.
Does Aurora might have more Flatpak integration? Maybe,
probably.
I don't know.
Well, it's more focused to general desktop use.
Yeah.
But Bazai works great in general desktop. This is the mess that is the Linux community. And I love the Linux community. I think it's awesome that we've got choices. I think it's awesome to have an operating system that just gets out of my way, lets me use my computer. I love this. But you can't look at this with rose-colored glasses and try to convince people that they need to make these moves without preparing them for what they're getting into. The good news is now with versions like Mint and Pop and Bazite and a few others that are geared toward that, put it on your system and run it. Don't do anything else. You don't need to. That approach is going to go a long way. I love the fact that I'm putting these distros on my computer. I don't have to go find the latest drivers. I don't have to go download this software package at this website and then run an install and make sure I got the right version. I don't have to do that. Okay, I install the OS. The drivers are up to date. I go to the app store, for lack of a better word, for each distro. There are the apps I want. I tell it to download it. They're fully updated. They're ready to go.
Yeah,
I love that.
Let me ask you something about drivers. When you first made that switch, because I'm going to assume that you're on all AMD hardware, right? Did you know at the time you were making the switch that all the drivers would be just baked into the kernel and ready to go out of the box, or were you expecting to kind of have to install things and
when
tweak
I
things?
First started dealing with Linux, I did not know that.
What was your reaction to that?
I was like,
finding that out.
Oh my God, this was like life-changing to me. This was so incredible. And I really thought that I would miss Radeon software. I don't miss it at all.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that too. Look, I'm sorry if this offends anybody out there, but the Radeon Adrenaline software, it has become complex is a good description for it.
It's got a lot of features that I don't know what voodoo they pulled, but Bazzite just has games automatically enabling it. You don't have to go in and turn them on in the driver. The games go, oh, you can do this. Here we go.
Do what exactly?
FSR.
Oh, yeah.
VRR.
Because, yep.
That to me is such a transformative experience for me with the way I use my computer, because I'm not going, which driver version do I need? And in Windows, when you have a problem with a game, you're flopping driver versions, which, by the way, affect everything in the computer. In Linux, you change the Proton for it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't affect anything but the game. I love this solution.
So
this
cool.
solution is so much better. I love the flat pack approach. I love the fact that the software doesn't attach to the kernel. It keeps a level of separation. I know to some people that might sound like a big deal, but as someone that values stability first, it's amazing. It's a night and day difference to the way things are. This is what I want to see fixed in gaming. I want to see kernel level anti-cheat go away. We don't need it at the kernel. You can do anti-cheat without the kernel. And
so why, let me ask you, because you're probably a lot more tuned into the gaming community than I am. Why is there kernel level anti-cheat? Why isn't there a different approach on Windows?
That's a question I would really love to get an answer from a developer, because Windows supports container solutions.
Yeah.
It has the ability to run container level software, which is basically Flatpak. It can do it. Why aren't we doing it? Why aren't we sandboxing every piece of software? Take everything off the kernel. My browser doesn't need to be linked to the kernel. My AI doesn't need to be linked to the kernel. Nothing needs to be linked to that kernel. That kernel, and this is why I think LTSC is the potential solution, because they took everything off the kernel. They said, leave it alone. The OS is the OS. Leave it alone. Add what you want to add. This is Linux in a nutshell.
CrowdStrike is all I'm going to say.
Yeah. LTSC and IoT are essentially Windows versions of Linux, for lack of a better word, in a philosophy point of view for the way it's designed.
And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but do you know about kind of the big performance gap between AMD and NVIDIA on Linux versus on Windows, how NVIDIA cards are much, much less performant?
That's technically not true. The performance gap isn't as big as people make it out to be. It's sporadic. AMD is rock solid in Linux. It's a gold standard for how to make a driver for a video card in Linux. And NVIDIA has moments when they work really well and moments when they suck. Okay, just suck so bad. And so that's the problem that NVIDIA has. When I talk to people about building Linux systems, you're going to build a Linux system, build an AMD. And I feel like that's
Sapphire. I think that's pretty universal advice.
Forget that I work for Sapphire for a minute. You build AMD, it's the gold standard. That's why you build AMD. So if you're converting and you have a NVIDIA video card, my advice is you go sell it. You take that money, you go buy a Sapphire card, which costs you less money than what you sold it for. You take the extra money, have a pizza party while you're enjoying your Linux gaming. That's my opinion. But
do you think, and you're absolutely right, but do you think that will remain as Linux adoption continues to increase? Like, can you envision 5 or 7 years from now, do you think AMD will be selling more dedicated GPUs because more people are moving to Linux and getting that narrative?
I would like to hope they will, but that means AMD needs to lean into Linux more. AMD needs to put more focus on Linux. Now, I know at Sapphire, we're having internal discussions about this. We're talking about how can we do this. I've actually got the guy that maintains Bazzite and the guy that maintains Universal Blue completely.
Kyle and George, right?
We're emailing. Yeah, we're emailing back and forth, trying to figure out how they can help Sapphire help Linux.
God. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that, because that was my next question, was like, how how do you think your Linux experience will inform how you
Well,
talk?
This is something I've initiated. You got to understand.
Tell us about it. Tell us what you're trying to do.
Most people in the industry look at raw numbers, and that's all they care about. And when you're working for a company that makes PC gaming hardware, you see 4% of PC gamers. Well, that's not worth the investment. Now, I can tell you internally what we're discussing. We want to see user feedback. So if we see emails coming in through our social media, through our Discord, if we see the response from the community, we really want you to get involved. We might take the first step. Maybe the first step is we bring Trix RGB control to Linux. Okay. That may be a first step. And if the community responds, goes, that's great. What else? Then we start investing. As the community expresses an interest and shows a level of support, the more interest we get, the more the company's going to be willing to put into it. And that's any company that exists. I can tell you, though, that this is actively being discussed at Sapphire.
That's really refreshing to hear. That's great.
So and this is what I want to see AMD, and I'd like to see AMD doing the same thing. And they are, okay? Give them credit. Their Linux driver team is, wow. I mean, just between them and what the open source community does with what they give them, fantastic.
There is a lot. I'm hearing a lot of chatter about the next, about Mesa 26 being kind of a huge leap forward.
That would be amazing. Well, I'm not worried about the performance jump. I want to see a little bit of feature set options.
Yeah.
A little better support for
what's
FSR
missing? What's missing from because again, I'm not a professional at this, but my understanding is that FSR support is solid. Is it not? Frame generation maybe isn't quite as
frame generation and FSR support, in my opinion, is not as robustly supported as it could be. It's good. It's better than anything NVIDIA's putting out there, but it's not at the level it could be yet. This is what I'm saying. I'd like to see AMD lean into this. Now, the question then becomes, though, where are we going to be at in 4 or 5 years with NVIDIA?
My opinion is they want everybody to use GeForce Now. That's what I think they want.
I'll get into that in a minute. In my opinion, if AI didn't exist, there'd be a horse race. And it would get ugly fast. Not for the consumers, but for those two companies. It would get ugly fast. With AI existing, I'm not sure NVIDIA cares.
Well, they're skipping. They said they're not releasing any new GPUs for the next year, right?
I really think AMD...
New consumer GPUs, rather.
I think, personally, that AMD is in a great position to lean in and take control of a market they already have a lead in. Now, what they decide to do, obviously, if I give you $1 with that advice, you've got $1.
Now, what lead are you talking about?
Well, right now, they're the gold standard.
Oh, for Linux,
when it comes to GPUs and Linux, AMD is the most used card.
Unquestionably.
They need to lean into this. This is the chance. This is it. They said they wanted market share. This is it. It's maybe not as sexy as the Windows.
Because you know what,
share.
if they do, they're at kind of the hockey stick curve, right? We're approaching a hockey stick curve.
Well, the other thing to consider is this: Windows gamers are fickle. Whatever has the highest benchmark at the moment is what a Windows gamer is going to buy. Okay, now I'm not picking on Windows gamers. I think most of them are great people, but I'm talking the community as a whole. Linux users as a whole are junkyard dogs. They are loyal to the point of stupid if you take care of them. You come in and you show them that you actually give a crap, and they will back you to the wall. Even when you screw up, they will back you to the wall and let you fix it.
And if you want proof of this, look at the opposite situation with NVIDIA, right?
Yes.
Look how long the NVIDIA grudge has been held by the Linux community. To be fair, Linus Torvalds is now, they have a pretty amicable relationship. So it's not.
Yeah, but you know what?
Screw you, NVIDIA. It's not that anymore. But
if you listen to him speak, he still doesn't want an NVIDIA card in his products.
No, he wants Intel.
He wants Intel or he wants AMD.
He wants
Actually, he
Intel.
doesn't mind AMD. It's that, but he wants, and I love that he said this. He just wants it to work.
Yes, exactly.
That's the philosophy. Okay.
So like
GeForce Now.
Yeah, talk to me.
Hang on to your
about
hats.
that.
Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Prepare for a classic rant. Cloud gaming is a cancer upon gaming.
Thank you.
It's a cancer upon gaming. Now, let me explain to you why. If you've got cloud gaming, think about this. Your gaming experience is completely controlled by your ISP. That means if your ISP is having a bad day, your gaming experience sucks. Who the ISP has connected to the backbone has a bad day, your experience sucks. NVIDIA servers have a bad day. In other words, you have no control of your computer gaming experience. And that sucks. But it gets worse. So when you want to play a game, I can go to Steam right now and I can go find Total Annihilation if I want to go back and play that, okay? I actually found this the other day on a really obscure website. There's a game I used to play in DOS called Rules of Engagement 2. It's an amazing game, by the way. It was just an incredible game at the time. It's DOS, but it was cool that I could download it. But if I'm stuck in a cloud-based service, I only get the games they choose to let me get. Okay, so now my freedom of choice of games are gone. Oh, wait, what about my playtime? You know what? Occasionally I'll have a day off.
They limited that. They limited that too, didn't they?
Yeah, 6 hours a day. So, you can break it. You can break it up. But you and I both know that we have had those binge gaming sessions that have been 9, 10, 12 hours sometimes.
Yeah.
They're telling me I can't do that because they decided I can't do that. And I can only have 100 hours a month unless I want to pay them more money. So you take all of this. Cloud gaming takes away everything that made computer gaming great. How do you mod with cloud gaming? There's a whole segment of gaming that just vanishes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true.
There is nothing about cloud gaming that I look at it and can find redeeming. And I looked at this a while back when the first cloud gaming, like what was it, on gaming or something like that?
On Live. I had an on live. I mean, it was for review.
Reading a review you wrote on it.
That was awful. It was terrible.
It was terrible.
God, it was terrible.
I get the concept. The concept is that you don't need a specific kind of device to be able to enjoy a video game. And there are circumstances where I can see that being good. Like if you're somebody who's on the road 20 days out of the year. Okay, you want to get in your hotel room, you want to relax, you hook your cell phone up to the TV and bang, you can play your game. Okay, I can see that. But most of us that are gamers don't have that. We want to sit down in front of my computer or my TV, and I want to enjoy my gaming experience. And cloud gaming gives control of that experience to somebody else, and I pay them to take the control from me. It's a cancer. We should stomp it out.
Why do you think something like GeForce Now has succeeded where Stadia and Luna failed and On Live failed, like every other gaming cloud solution failed?
Are we sure it has? Have they really published all that much data?
Well, why do you think GeForce Now still exists then? Let's not use the word successful.
You know
why do you think it's still around when the others failed?
I don't have any tinfoil here, so I can put on a hat. Okay, I'm going to say this up front. This is a conspiracy theory, but it's the most plausible theory that this gives NVIDIA something to do with all these servers they're building.
Yep.
It allows them to stop making video cards and keep the gaming community. And
look, I don't know if that's a real crazy conspiracy theory.
Well, I think it is, but
I don't think it's crazy.
Okay, look. At the end of the day, here's what this boils down to. And anybody in the industry that's listening, please pay attention to what I'm about to say. Gamers are not upset that PC gaming is in a state of decline right now. That doesn't upset us. We are upset because we're watching the major hardware players actively try to kill it.
I just want to clarify for people listening that I believe what you mean is the PC building experience is on the decline, right? Because PC gaming isn't
Well, no,
on
even
the
the
decline,
PC
right?
gaming experience, because remember, if you can't build PCs, how are you going to game on them? You're going to have to buy them from pre-made, but those are on decline because it's impossible for us to get parts. I'm not saying they actively want to kill gaming, but their actions are doing it. When you see major RAM manufacturers say, forget the consumer, we want the AI market.
For data centers that aren't even built yet.
Yeah.
Right? God.
This is the frustration that gamers feel. And you need to acknowledge that, because a lot of these companies only exist today because of gaming.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was stunned when Crucial just exited the consumer market.
That was crazy to me.
I could not believe that was happening. Like, what timeline are we on? Like, NVIDIA consumer GPUs, isn't that just a small, hasn't it always been a small fraction of their business? Not always, but within the last decade, hasn't that always been much smaller?
In the last 5 to 7 years, it's probably been to the point that they could have let it go and not hurt themselves financially.
Interesting. That's kind of what I suspected. I just didn't have any proof of, it was just a gut feeling,
I don't have any proof. I look at the numbers. I look at what their monetary reports are showing. It's a tiny fraction of what NVIDIA is capable of. And Jensen's been saying for a long time, they're a software company, not a hardware company. There had already begun to be a move. The level that they've taken it to really surprises me. What is PC gaming, a $10-12 billion a year industry? The hardware side is? I understand it's not as big as some other aspects are. That's a lot of money to kind of turn your back on.
Well, $5 trillion company, Ed.
Yeah, but still, you don't turn your back on a market that's that big, especially since it built you.
That's what, okay. And this has been like, I'm going to look, I have shown my AMD fanboy colors throughout the years. There's no questioning it. And it started when NVIDIA blacklisted me when I was at Forbes for saying that the Titan Z was a ripoff. Like, I think that's the word I use. It was a complete ripoff compared to whatever the AMD equivalent. Well, I don't remember the model numbers.
The Titan always was.
But it was like the Titan was something like $2,000, where the AMD equivalent was $1,000. Right. And the second I published that, like, I never heard anything from NVIDIA again. I was never offered any product. They wouldn't respond to emails. It's like a silent blacklist, right? And at the same time, I always got the impression that NVIDIA doesn't care about you as a gamer, but I feel like there are large pockets within AMD that do care. There are like companies like Sapphire,
yes.
Genuinely, I've always had the impression they genuinely care about their community. NVIDIA doesn't give a crap. And so I've always, that's the impression I've always had. I don't know if that's true. That's just, that's my POV. That's the POV.
I don't have direct communication with a lot of people inside NVIDIA. And I'd like to change that. I like a lot of the people inside NVIDIA. That would be something that maybe if you could get Peterson to sit down and talk off the record,
oh gosh,
you could get a more inside look into.
Like, that guy genuinely cares.
The impression they've given over the years is they don't care about the community.
Right. The public-facing impression. That doesn't mean people inside the company.
Has been very clear that you guys are just here because we allow you the pleasure of our existence. I feel like corporate America in general too often focuses it's back to bigger number better. Bigger stock share, better, bigger stock price, better. The entire industry, to a small extent, has moved away from what do we do for the industry to what does the industry do for us.
I meant to ask you this earlier, but in the communities, in the Sapphire communities that you've built and that you engage in, have you noticed an uptick of people asking you, hey, Ed, what do you think about Linux? Like, should I switch to Linux? Or have you had any questions like that?
Well, we actually have an active Linux channel in our Discord.
Oh, that's cool.
And so we discussed, I put it there just because of my adventure. I'd like the channel to be a lot more active, but in the grand scheme of things, we're a small player in all of this. Myself and a few others went to AMD and begged them for a Linux channel in their Discord and got it.
Oh, that's
so
really cool.
We're seeing active discussion. The number I brought up internally at Sapphire that I think is important, I did a couple of polling. Now, I can't get a big enough sample size to be meaningful on this, okay?
Yeah, that's fair.
But the polling was, how many of you have switched to Linux? How many of you are considering to switch to Linux? How many of you are not?
Okay.
Well, the number that switched was like 20%, but I take that number with a grain of salt because Linux users will flock to a poll like this and it becomes artificially inflated. I take that number with a grain of salt, but the thinking about switching to Linux to me was the much more important number because it was like 45%.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big jump. You're only going to get about half of that to actually try. And you're only going to end up with about half of that that's going to actually stay.
Stick. Yeah, yeah.
But still, that's a reasonable number. And as you said, we're looking at the hockey stick. Okay, Linux is. I'm thinking when you see the Steam survey hit 5 to 6% Linux, that's when you're going to see critical mass.
I think it's going to happen by the end of this year.
It's possible. If Microsoft doesn't get its act together, I believe it will happen.
Yeah.
If Microsoft were to really get its act together and clean up the OS and simplify things back down like we've discussed, I really think they could stall off Linux.
Yeah, because it's interesting because I think, what your survey results, although it's not a huge sample size, I feel like it is kind of representative of the general mindset right now. Let's just say in the last year, and I've never seen this before in Linux coverage, you have major outlets like The Verge hyping up Linux. You have major mainstream YouTubers like Dave2D, like PewDiePie, like Linus Tech Tips talking up all the good things about Linux. That's not something that's happened before. And there's that's why I think we're kind of at that hockey stick. And
here's the one problem with all those examples. Where are they at today? They haven't talked it up since. Jay's 2 cents talked about Linux gaming, how cool
he didn't have the best
and
experience.
He never followed up.
So do you think it's just clickbait? Well, that's harsh, but
I think that there is not a genuine push on many of their cases to actually make the move. They see it being talked about, they look at it, they think it's really cool, and then they ignore it and move on. Now, when you show me one of those major people that says, hey, I've been driving nothing but Linux on my personal rig for the last 6 months.
That's PewDiePie, though. PewDiePie with like 10 plus million.
PewDiePie, I'll give PewDiePie credit.
Yeah,
he really went hardcore.
He went down that rabbit hole and
he
man.
Yeah, no, I'm not even going down that rabbit hole. But when you look at the people like Hardware Unboxed or Jay's 2 cents or Gamers Nexus or Linus or Hardware Canucks, or you look at all these websites, when you see one of them start talking about, we've made the move to Linux, we're going to go for Linux for gaming, we're done. That's when you're going to see something really happen. Publishing an article that this is viable, this is cool, those are great articles.
You know what I think? I have a theory on this. As someone who's done technical marketing at Radeon and as someone who's done like benchmarking, I think that once automated solutions present themselves or are built, that they will switch. Yeah, so Steve at Gamers Nexus worked with Wendell to come up with kind of a benchmarking environment. But like they were very transparent about it and said, this is an awful lot of work compared to what we do on Windows because it's all automated.
I'm not talking about the benchmarking environment. That will come
You're saying
along.
like I'm personally, like
actually
all these hosts go,
using it.
I'm personally using Linux now.
Actually using it.
Okay.
A lot of the people that follow these guys, when they say it's what they use in their personal system, 1,000 people go out and get it.
Because it's one thing to do a one-off video about it.
Yeah, a one-off
like,
is a good informative video. It's useful. It has purpose. It has meaning. And for the Linux community, it's important. I'm just saying that if you really want that impact from those channels, that's the one thing that's missing.
Because people who are in influencer roles like that, people are not subscribing to what they talk about. They're subscribing to who they are.
A lot of times.
You know what I'm saying?
There's a level of cult of personality.
When it's not do as I say, not as I do, when it's actually do as I do, then yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. A channel like yours is amazing, but a channel like yours saying Linux is awesome.
It's
Linux
expected.
Channel.
It's expected. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like me saying Sapphire makes awesome graphics cards. You expect me to say that.
But there is data to back it up in both cases.
To back it up,
yeah,
but that's not.
yeah.
But my point is,
it's hard
if you want to get this growth kickstarted. That's the kickstart it needs. PewDiePie probably accounted for 1 million Linux users by himself.
To kind of complement what you're saying, I think the other thing that is required to kickstart more Linux adoption is selling PCs with Linux on it. You know, mainstream,
at least give
laptops,
you the option.
Mainstream PCs. If Zotac or Origin or Alienware came along and they're like, hey, we're offering a Bazite option in our configurator, right? That's huge. I think that's huge. I mean, Dell does it with certain laptops, but they don't really promote it. You know, it's not for gamers.
Just give me the choice. Be a major manufacturer of computers and say, here's your option.
But I guess that means they also have to support that OS then, right? Maybe that's why it doesn't happen, is because they have to.
You know what? How hard is it to support Linux?
I don't know.
I mean, if you're selling it and you're making clear that there's a level of use at your own risk with certain factors of Linux. It exists in Windows too. Okay, call up Dell, tell them you did a registry hack, and watch them hang up on you.
Actually, yeah, right.
The thing is to remember when you buy hardware like that, the support really you should be getting is on the hardware.
Then what do you think is stopping all of these boutique PC companies from just offering Linux? Why don't they at this point? Because there's some momentum happening, like with Bazite and Casio.
You're back to the comfortable shoe theory. I'm sorry, the analogy might break down for some people, but that's really the way the choice feels right now. Linux is good. It does what we need it to do. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Windows is comfortable, familiar, and has a massive compatibility bonus. Windows also comes with a ton of baggage. Linux has less.
Yeah.
How do you choose? You choose what's comfortable for you.
Well, yeah, I guess it just, and most people don't choose, right? Most people buy a PC, it has Windows.
No, they don't choose. They just default. They default.
You know, there's not a lot of people who want to install a new operating system that they're not familiar with, and
there's not a lot of people that want to install an operating system. Period.
That's a hurdle. But if those same people had to install Windows from scratch, oh my God!
If you set them down,
because that's a horror show now.
Okay, if you set down the average user and set them in front of them. By the way, I just did the Pop OS install, so I'll use that as an example.
Okay, I'll use Windows 11.
You set them down, and you give them Windows 11 Home and Pop OS, and tell them to do the install. If they don't choose Pop OS every time after using both, they're masochists.
I know.
Okay, it is night and day different at how simple a Linux install is. And you know what? There's even unseen advantages people don't realize with Linux. I had this hit me the other day. I've got my Plex server stored on my wife's computer.
Oh, you use Plex too. Very cool. Yes. I've got mine on a TrueNAS system.
Well, mine's on my wife's computer in Windows, but that's because Plex server and Linux is a bit of a finicky mess.
No, it's not.
Anyway,
I will change your mind.
I've been told it is.
I will change your mind. Ed, I've been using it for 4 years without a single problem.
You and I may talk that. So anyway,
and I can tell you, I have personal experience on actually migrating it, the same server environment with all the metadata and everything from Windows to Linux. So I can help you. I can help you out with that.
So anyway, though, I wanted to back up the movie folder. And so I hooked up my USB drive. I started the backup. And this is going to be like 5 hours. Okay. And I know it's going to be. That's okay. So I back it up and I get it going. And I go make some lunch and I'm doing some other stuff. In my old man brain, I forgot that I was in the middle of that backup. So I opened up No Man's Sky and started playing. And I just played. I just enjoyed it. I had a good time. And all of a sudden I get a pop-up in the bottom that says, your file copy has completed and blah, blah, blah. Wait a minute. What? It was doing that the whole time? So I had to know. I went to the Windows system out there, and this is on wireless for hers, by the way. So,
okay.
So I hooked up the same drive. I hooked it up to the USB port. I started the download, and then I opened No Man's Sky. It was a chuggy mess. In Windows, it was a mess. In Linux, it didn't care.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It just kept
I'm not
going.
surprised.
That was a really impressive little trick to me. Little things like that are what's really keeping me here.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear.
It's
the experience. It's just smoother.
And like I said,
it's less intrusive. It's less intrusive too. Well, this has been a really awesome, enlightening
I'm glad you
conversation.
had fun. I enjoyed talking to you.
It's nice to hear some fresh perspectives, right? Because I didn't come from using Windows just 3 months ago and switching to Linux. You know, I haven't used Windows actively in years, unless I'm benchmarking something, unless I'm doing a Windows versus Linux type of benchmark, which I do a lot. And it's never a good time on the Windows side of things.
You know
it's never a good time.
my advice to you is stop comparing it to Windows for performance. Compare it for feature set, compare it for desktop productivity, compare it for stability. These are the things at the end of the day are more important to most people.
Well, but I do think that when you're talking to gamers and you show them like that side by side and you say, look,
I'm not saying
these numbers are pretty similar, but look at how the Windows experience is.
I don't think you have to ignore it. I think, though, that it can't be the focus.
You're right. I mean, I think the myths need to be dispelled. The myths of like, it's hard to install. There's no driver support. You have to use a command line for everything. All of the,
that's the one I have the most
no
fun
apps,
with. People,
like there are mostly like there's native Discord, there's native Spotify, there's Teams, there's so much stuff.
Well, now I don't, as silly as it sounds, I don't use Teams with the native app. I use the browser WPA or PWA again to do that, and I found that it worked better. It had better control.
Ed, one last question? Have you any of the games that you personally play? Has it been an obstacle getting any of those to run on Linux for you?
Only one. The only game I have had trouble with is a very old game called Demigod.
Was it DOS?
No, it's Windows.
Oh, okay.
It was actually one of the first ever MOBAs to be created.
Oh, all right.
Stardock was the company that made it.
Stardock.
It's an amazing game. It's just so much fun. It will not run in Linux.
It's called Demigod?
Demigod. DEMIGOD.
ProtonDB says it might.
It doesn't.
But
nothing I tried.
Yeah, it's rated silver, and there's, it looks like there's a lot of people saying it works and a lot of people saying it doesn't work, which is also
for about an hour.
Genuinely one of the problems with Linux gaming.
Yeah.
Is there's so many different variables that can affect is it going to run or is it not?
For about an hour, couldn't get it to work, and I just said, you know what? I haven't played it in a while anyway.
That's a bummer.
That's okay. It's an older game. I've moved. Most of my time right now is, No Man's Sky quite a bit. No Man's Sky to me is very relaxing. going out and exploring the universe for some reason is just very relaxing. I've been playing that. I've been playing Starfield lately. It's still a little empty, but the game's not terrible. It's just really sad because Bethesda could have had an amazing winner of a game there, and they just kind of
they got a lot of hate when that game launched.
Yeah, they haven't done much to really bring it back up. Then Space Marines 2, Helldivers 2.
Helldivers 2 is a blast. Arc Raiders is a blast.
Rogue Trader.
Space Marine 2 is man, that's a demanding game.
I love that game.
Yeah.
I actually prefer it to Helldivers.
Yeah. It's different experience, but
yeah, well, it's a different approach to the same concept.
I love how
gameplay.
Heavy Space Marines 2 feels. Like there's like this weight to the characters and the weaponry, kind of like Gears of War. There's this weight to it.
Oh, and then I've been playing MechWarrior 5 Clans.
Oh, damn. I haven't heard MechWarrior in a long time. Jeez.
So I play a lot of different games. I try a lot of different games. Some I keep, some I don't. I'm excited about, I don't know if you saw Owlcats making an RPG for The Expanse.
Oh, yes. Yes, I remember hearing about that. I don't know how soon it's happening.
Well, that's the argument I've been actually having with the devs on Twitter, because they'll post all this stuff about, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. I said, give me a freaking launch window. Tell me when you expect to launch. They've got pre-order sales up. I would love to pre-order. Give me a launch window.
I was obsessed with The Expanse. I read all the books.
Yes.
And then I loved every single minute of the show.
The TV show was fantastic.
And yeah, I'm just waiting for more Expanse stuff now.
The only better TV show to me was Babylon 5.
I thought you were going to say Battlestar Galactica.
No, you know what? The new Battlestar Galactica wasn't bad. I think it leaned into romances a bit too much. I'm a sci-fi buff. I mean, I'm all excited. We got Hail Marys coming up next month.
Yeah, I have that book and I need to read it before the movie because
the book is really good.
I always try to read the book before the.
Another book series to try if you want good sci-fi is the Rama series by Arthur C. Clarke.
Oh, okay, I know that. I know that name.
It is less science fiction than a delve in the duality of humanity, but it does it in a science fiction setting in 6 books.
All right, I'll throw a recommendation back at you. Children of Time.
Pardon?
The Children of Time series by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
That's actually on my read list.
Yes, it's so good.